Hi, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. Are you looking for a beach read this summer? May I suggest your big wireless bill? It's got suspense, mystery, a slightly flat emotional arc, and a shocking twist where you realize you've been overpaying the entire time. Fortunately, though, Mint's story is better. Every plan, $15 a month, even unlimited. That's it. Happy ending, zero tears. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content and $7 Productions. November 9th, 1914. The crystal clear waters of the Cocos Islands in the Indian Ocean are shattered by the deafening roar of naval broadsides. Plumes of ocean water geyser hundreds of feet in the air as the German light cruiser SMS Emden, crowded, battered, and engulfed in black smoke, trades blistering salvos with the massive, heavily armored Australian cruiser Sydney. At the center of the burning quarterdeck, standing calm and resolute as shrapnel shreds his superstructure, is Captain Lieutenant Karl von Müller. Müller isn't a ruthless sea monster or a cold-blooded warlord. He is a gentleman captain, a master strategist, and a phantom of the high seas. For 3 straight months, Müller and his single warship have waged a brilliant one-vessel commerce raid against the Indian Ocean that has completely paralyzed the shipping of 4 allied empires. Müller has captured or sunk 24 enemy vessels, destroyed millions of dollars in war material, bombarded British oil depots, and outmaneuvered squadrons of Allied warships sent to hunt him down. All while treating his prisoners with such impeccable chivalry and respect that even his enemies can't help but admire him. They call his ship the Swan of the East, and for 90 days, he has been the most hunted man in the Indian Ocean. But now the game of hide-and-seek is over. Caught off guard while severing the telegraph cable connecting Australian communications with the outside world, the Emden is now hopelessly outgunned. The Sydney's heavy 6-inch shells smash through her decks, disabling her guns, severing her steering gear, and collapsing her funnels into a twisted heap of glowing metal. Müller knows the battle is lost. He knows his ship is done. But back on shore, watching the horizon burn, Müller's stranded landing party refuses to surrender. And as the Emden runs aground on the coral reefs, 50 German sailors seize an old 3-masted wooden schooner, raise their banner, and set sail into the unknown, igniting a staggering, epic journey across thousands of miles of hostile ocean, desert, and active war zones, just to fight their way back home. Hello, and welcome back to Badass of the Week, the show where we tell the badass history of badasses. My name is Ben Thompson, and I am joined by a very special guest for today's episode. We've had our producer, Andrew Jacobs, has been a regular co-host on the show, and we're going to welcome Paul Jacobs to the show. Paul, thank you so much for coming on. It's really an honor to talk to you today.
Thank you, Ben. I'm really happy to be here.
So I have had Andrew on for a couple of maritime episodes. We talked about the Potemkin. I've talked about Mutiny on the Bounty. We've talked about several. We talked about the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the World War II heist where they stole the ship. Max Hardberger was a repo man who stole ships. And in every episode, he has kind of mentioned that he likes talking about ships, but the real expert here is his dad. And so I felt like we had to bring in the big guns for today's episode.
Well, when it comes to ships, that's one of my specialties, especially warships.
Yes, and that is what we're going to be talking about today. We have a really fun episode for you guys. When you were going to come on the show, I asked what would he want to talk about? And you'd mentioned the warship Emden, to Andrew, and he passed that on to me. And I said, oh, I don't actually know this story. And I was really excited to dig into it. And the more I dug into this story, the more I was just amazed by the courage and the tenacity and the just amazing details of the German warship Emden in World War I. And I'm really excited to tell this story together with you.
Well, and it's not just the story of the Emden, but of the men who manned her and her landing party, which made a journey worthy of Odysseus.
Yes.
I think it's a timely story, given the fact that right now Christopher Nolan's movie is so popular. Mm-hmm. And the story of the Emden and her landing party is really, truly an odyssey.
Yes, it is.
I don't know how many miles Odysseus traveled, but the Emden and her crew and her landing party traveled tens of thousands of miles during their few months of journeying. So it's quite a story.
Yes, there are going to be some naval battles. There's some chases. There's some piracy happening to some degree, privateering, I guess. It's going to be a World War I odyssey, and you're really going to want to stick around and listen to this story. We are going to take a really quick ad break, and when we come back, we'll be here with Paul, and we're going to tell the story of the Emden.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
Insurance is entering a new era. Policyholders expect a fast and flexible experience from the insurers they trust. That's why modern insurers run on Adyen. From effortless premium collections to instant claims payouts, Adyen's single platform automates your entire policy lifecycle. A single platform to reduce churn and claims fraud, drive revenue, stay in control of how your money moves. Adyen, fintech built for your next move.
Got a Sam's Cafe pizza order up. You know the best part about this spicy Italian sausage? I voted for this topping. Yeah, just another perk of being a member. Come join us. Sam's Club.
All right, welcome back to Badass of the Week. I am here with badass producer Andrew Jacobs' father, Paul, and we are going to tell the story of the Emden and her crew. Paul, this is going to be a World War I naval adventure. And when we think about World War I commerce raiding, we generally picture kind of cranky. We picture Das Boot. We picture like a cranky U-boat captain firing torpedoes at enemy ships. And today's captain does things a little bit differently.
Yes. In August of 1914, when the war started, Britain, France, and Russia lined up against what was known as the Central Powers, Germany and Austria-Hungary. And the war immediately became a vicious battle in Europe with millions of men in the field and tens of thousands of casualties within the first few days. In fact, I think the French suffered within the first month or so at least 1 million casualties. So the battles in Europe were enormous.
Just horrifying stuff, because you run up to these situations at this time where you have, they always say that the generals are trying to fight the war before with the modern technology, right? The generals are still trying to fight line infantry with muskets, and they're charging each other on these open fields. And people at this time, they have hand grenades and machine guns and bolt action rifles. The old strategies are not working, and people are being massacred. It is a horrifying war, especially in the throughout the whole war. But at the beginning of the war, people are just kind of staggered by how violent and bloody this war is.
Yeah, absolutely. The machine gun in particular was a real game changer.
Mm-hmm.
But much of the world was controlled or owned by Europe. Africa was virtually all European colonies. The French had what is now known as Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. The British had India and Malaya. As they said at the time, the sun never set on the British Empire.
Right.
And a number of the European powers also had colonies or territories in China in particular. Japan had Korea. Germany had a small colony in what is now Qingdao, which was at the time called Tsingtao. I think maybe some of your listeners are familiar with Tsingtao beer.
Yes.
Its origins is actually German.
Oh, interesting.
It was a German colony from about 1899 or 1898. And the Germans had a squadron of ships there, the East Asia Squadron, which comprised 2 armored cruisers, which were about 13,000-ton ships and heavily armed and armored, and 4 light cruisers of approximately 3,000 to 3,600 tons. And one of those light cruisers was the cruiser Emden, a very slim and attractive vessel, 3 funnels, as was common at the time with overseas ships. The German ships were painted white with buff-colored funnels, and Emden came to be called the Swan of the East because she was a very elegant-looking ship. At the time the war broke out, the squadron under the command of Admiral Graf von Spee, the squadron was in the Marshall Islands in the middle of the Pacific, which was at the time a German possession. And when Japan entered the war shortly after it started, von Spee realized that he couldn't take his squadron back to Qingdao because the Japanese had a very large and powerful navy. In fact, they had the most powerful navy in the Pacific at the time. He decided that he was going to have to take his squadron east to South America and then try to get back to Germany through the Atlantic. Captain of the Emden, Karl von Müller, suggested to the admiral that he take his ship and instead of going with the rest of the squadron, that he go west into the Indian Ocean and engage in commerce raiding, which would keep the British, the French, the Russians, and the Japanese, who were all in the war, occupied so that they wouldn't be focused on trying to catch von Spee's squadron. And so the admiral agreed to that.
Right. And so there's a number of advantages here because Karl von Müller, he's not really what you'd picture for like a piracy kind of guy. He's like a pretty mild-mannered, calm under pressure. He's in his early 40s. He's been suffering chronic malaria because, as you said, these are international empires. These are like colonial empires. So he was he was stationed in Africa for a while. He caught malaria. And he can't really shake it. He's been suffering from this ever since. Like you said, the von Spee wants to go. The call is like, we need to come back, right? The German Navy is going to be under attack from the British and the French and the Russian navies. We need everybody back home. And von Spee is like, okay, we're going to make a break for it. We can't go to the west because you have to pass through the Indian Ocean, which India at the time is British. Like you said, British has Malaysia. They have India. It's very dangerous. But the Emden, the SMS Emden and von Müller, they're like, okay, what if we start attacking the shipping, not just to damage these countries economically, as you said, to like draw attention away from von Spee's thing, but it also damages these countries economically, and it prevents resources and troops and other things returning from the colonial empires back to the homeland to help with the war effort as well. So this ends up being a really interesting idea. And as you said, von Spee is okay with it and sends Müller off.
Yeah, and your listeners should understand that commerce raiding, as opposed to piracy, was a long-standing tradition in the world. The concept being that you interfered with your enemy's commerce by capturing his ships and preventing him from being able to trade and preventing him from being able to get food and supplies and other things that he needed in order to prosecute a war.
Right. And we see this in the times of the pirates, but we're still seeing this today. And whether you're talking about Iran or Ukraine, like we're still seeing commerce raiding as a tactic
we're seeing
that's utilized today.
It's happening actually in the Black Sea right now.
For sure.
But there are rules, or there were rules, which are unfortunately not followed so well today. But the rules in 1914 basically were that you could stop an enemy's merchant ship, but you were required to allow the crew to evacuate the ship before you sank it. You weren't supposed to fire on it unless you had to. And prisoners were to be treated humanely and eventually repatriated.
Right.
And von Müller followed that rule to a T.
Yes. He's a good guy, and he's gonna follow these rules of warfare. But he's got a problem in the early days of his campaign, because what he's kind of going to von Spee and saying, he's like, I'm going to go solo into the Indian Ocean, which is completely full of shipping from 4 like global empires that are at war with us, by myself in my white, beautiful ship, the Swan of the East, which seems like it would be pretty fairly recognizable. And now he's got how is he? It seems like a difficult mission to try to lone wolf the entire Indian Ocean by yourself.
Let me point out that soon after the war started, they repainted their ships gray. But the difficulties, of course, is being able to maintain yourself at sea without any bases.
Right.
Because aside from Qingdao, which soon was besieged by the Japanese and ultimately fell in, I think, October or November, there were no bases that the Emden could use.
Right. That's a really interesting point. Where do you get more shells for your guns? Because those shells aren't always, bullet calibers and shells aren't interchangeable between British and German warships. You can't capture some of this stuff. You have to get your weapons, you have to get your shells, you have to get food, clean water, and nobody is friendly. I did an episode with Andrew about the Magellan trip, and the second half of that Magellan voyage, they can't, when Juan Elcano is in charge, they can't stop anywhere in Africa, because as soon as they stop, they're going to get attacked.
Yeah. Von Müller was fortunate because before the siege of Qingdao took place, he was able to get back there, get more ammunition and supplies, so that he was able to go out on this cruise fully prepared. But of course, the problem is you use up food, you use up water, you use up fuel. And back in 1914, I would say 98% of ships at the time used coal as fuel. They did not use oil. Oil was just being introduced into the newest warships. And so von Müller had to regularly recoal his ship and to obviously find a way to get supplies. And the way to do that was to capture the enemy's merchant ships. And he did that during his few months at sea before the Emden finally met her fate. He captured almost 24 merchant ships. Some of these ships he used as supply ships. For instance, some of them were carrying coal. And so he would put a prize crew aboard and then set up a rendezvous and a date and so forth to meet so that he could recoal. As some of these ships carried a lot of food, and so he was able to resupply himself with food, with water, with all sorts of things that he needed. In fact, he was able to get a lot of intelligence because he was able to get newspapers that happened to be on board some of these ships, recent newspapers. Because he treated the crews so well, they were very forthcoming with information. So he had some of the masters of these merchant ships actually told him, oh, there's a British cruiser that we saw 3 days ago looking for you. So, it was very helpful for him to capture these ships.
Right. You get farther with honey than with vinegar. He would capture these ships. And like you said, there are rules of war, but they're not always being followed. Definitely not today, but not always in 1914 either. And so he becomes he gets this reputation because he'll attack a merchant ship and, rather than just blow it up or sink it or board it with whatever swords and muskets or rifles, he captures the ship. He brings the crew aboard. He gives them food. He gives them comfortable quarters. In some cases, he gives them cigars. He doesn't harm any of the civilians. No merchant sailors are killed over his entire career. He allows the officers to keep their private belongings. He'll give them back like pocket watches, family photos, lets them bring them with them before they come on board. I saw a funny thing that he said he had a rule that if there were any female passengers on board, he told his men that they weren't allowed to swear in front of them.
He fed the prisoners the same food that he fed his own crew.
Right.
And he treated them so well that he soon became known as the gentleman pirate. Mm-hmm. Even though he wasn't actually engaged in piracy, but, that was great for the newspapers.
Yes, and that's the amazing thing. The British press is calling him the gentleman raider. They're talking about his chivalry. They're writing these kind of glowing articles about him. And he's the enemy. His ships are currently sinking their cargo, right? And this is a violent and bloody war where, every other article is the Hun this and the Hun that. But they're writing these really positive stories about him. He kind of becomes this glamorous, chivalrous, enemy pirate kind of guy, but he gets this reputation.
Yeah, and well, of course, it sold newspapers. Mm-hmm. And he became famous around the world because of his exploits at the time. It was great reading.
It's like an adventure novel. It's like the sort of things that they had written about in the old days of wooden ships, except he's doing this on an ironclad German warship.
Yes. So he became famous around the world at the time. And, keep in mind, in 1914, newspapers were the internet, the radio, the television. They were everything because they didn't have any other medium of information aside from books and newspapers. Today, I don't know how many, a lot of people don't even bother reading newspapers.
I found a newspaper. I'll tell you this, Paul. I found a newspaper. I took my son's 5. I took him to lunch the other day after summer camp, and they had this newspaper. They had newspapers in the waiting area for the restaurant, and I grabbed one and we were going through it, and I started filling out the crossword puzzle in the newspaper, and my son was horrified. He was like, "That's a book. You can't write in a book." I'm like, "No, this is trash. You don't understand.
Yeah.
I can't explain this to you, but back before the internet, I don't know. I don't even know how to begin to explain it, but you can write in this book. It's okay."
Well, so while Müller, von Müller is traveling all around the Indian Ocean, he also goes into the Bay of Bengal. There are at least 16 Allied warships in the Indian Ocean and so forth looking for him. It's
off the coast of India, right? This is British India at the peak of the Raj, right? This is not, and he is one German pirate, basically, or privateer, I guess is a better term for him, or commerce raider, attacking British ships off the coast. Now, I kind of want to take a moment here to talk about his tactics, because the Emden captures or sinks 23 Allied ships in the course of just a few weeks. And he's sailing up and down Allied shipping lanes. He's in a warship with 10 105 millimeter naval guns on the hull. But he comes up with, a lot of piracy involves deception. And he comes up with a very interesting idea to disguise his ship. And this is how he is able to maneuver so efficiently behind enemy lines.
Yes, he learns that there's one British cruiser that's after him, and he heads for what is today Indonesia, but which was then the Dutch East Indies, and the Dutch were neutral in the war, so he arrives there, and a Dutch naval ship basically tells him, "Hey, you can't be here. You gotta leave our waters."
Right. If we get caught helping you, we're gonna be dragged into the war.
Yeah. So he leaves, and he decides that it might be a good idea to disguise himself so he isn't so readily discernible. So he builds out of canvas and wood a dummy funnel. So now he's a 4-funneled cruiser instead of a 3-funneled cruiser.
And I love this. So the idea here is that German warships at the time had 3 funnels. And my understanding is the funnels are they're for the engine and the smokestack. They're smokestacks basically.
And on ships back then, they were pretty tall.
There's one of the most
discernible.
discernible things. If you're looking at somebody from a spyglass, right? We're not looking at radar at the time. It's a dude with a telescope. In the old days, you were looking at how many sails they had. Now you're looking at how many funnels they have to sell. It's far away, miles and miles away. Is this a good guy or a bad guy? The German ships had 3 funnels, and British warships generally had 4. And so they make a fake funnel so they look like a Weymouth-class British cruiser, which I just think is so interesting. It's like painting a fake mustache on the front of the ship.
Yeah, as it happened, most of the British cruisers that were on the India station or the Australian station happened to have 4 funnels. They were more modern ships and bigger than the Emden, which was another problem for the Emden, for von Müller, which was that if he happened to come across, a British or Australian cruiser or a Japanese cruiser, he was going to be outgunned.
Any of these 16 warships that are actively hunting him.
So anyway, in this configuration, he sailed into the Bay of Bengal, and he actually attacked India. He sailed into the harbor at Madras, India, and shelled it during the night, setting on fire some oil tanks there and damaging some merchant ships there and scaring the bejesus out of the Indians. And as a result of that, the British admiral in the Indian Ocean, he was quite exercised about that because attacking India was a problem because the British needed the Indians in the war. Indian troops were actually already, by September, there were Indian troops on the Western Front.
Right. You have Indian soldiers, you have Sikhs, you have Gurkhas, you have all these, and not to mention the supplies and all the trade materials. It's a valuable place. And Karl von Müller has sunk 23 merchant ships, 70,000 tons of shipping. He is threatening to cripple trade routes between India, Singapore, Australia, and the rest of England. He's single-handedly taking over the Indian Ocean, single-handedly terrorizing the Indian Ocean, and now he's attacking India itself. He's giving the British a panic attack.
Yeah, but they still can't find him.
That fake funnel, that canvas funnel is just throwing them off. It's like hiding in a bush. I think it's so funny that it seems so easy and so simple, but at that time, there was no IFF radar detection or anything like that. If you looked at it, saw 4 funnels, you're like, that's probably one of ours. The German ships have 3.
It wasn't unlike what pirates had done, a century or so before, disguising their ships, right?
Right. And then he sails up and he has a British flag. So he'll sail up with a British flag. And then when he gets close to these merchant ships, they'll be like, because at the time, ships would just sail up to each other. Like you said, there's no internet. They sail up to each other and exchange stories. What's going on? Where are you headed? Where are you going? What's going on? You've heard any good news? And then right when they start to get close, he'd run down the British flag, run up the German flag, point those guns at the merchant ship and be like, well, we could do this the easy way or the hard way.
Yeah.
And especially once they knew who he was and he had this reputation for being honorable and kind, the merchant sailors didn't feel like, oh, I have to fight for my life now. Like I'm going to die. They could be like, I'll surrender. It's not going to be so bad. He'll take your stuff, but you'll get to live. You get to keep your pocket watch or whatever.
And one of the things that von Müller did was that he would stop neutral ships as well, but he would then transfer his prisoners over to the neutral ships so that he wasn't burdened with, more and more and more of these people. But that's, of course, how the stories then got out to the press and everyone, which is that, the prisoners would be put on a neutral ship, they'd get to port, and then they'd talk to the press. And in one instance, he actually, in order to unload prisoners, stopped a British ship, transferred the prisoners to the British ship, and let the British ship go. I mean, he was anything but ruthless.
Yes. And so now he's got the entire Royal Navy in the Indian Ocean searching for him. Now, this is probably a good time to take a break because when we come back, Karl von Müller is an extremely effective commerce raider and terrorizing the Indian Ocean with a German warship from the Baltic, right? That was built in the Baltic Sea. It's now terrorizing the Indian Ocean. Yeah. We are going to take a break because when we come back, 4 imperial navies are going to be hunting this guy, and he's going to respond by pulling off his boldest stunt yet.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
Leading insurers know that fragmented operations don't cut it anymore. Policyholders expect more, and modern insurers meet those expectations with Adyen. From effortless premium collections to instant claims payouts, Adyen's single platform automates the entire policy lifecycle. One platform to manage how money moves, control claims fraud, and automate operations. Adyen, fintech built for your next move.
I'm Glenn Washington, host of Snap Judgment from KQED. Every week, Snap drops you inside someone's biggest decision. The kind of decision you can only make once. With everything on the line, what do you believe? What do you want? And what would you risk to get it? Find out. Tap to listen now to Snap Judgment from KQED on Spotify.
All right, welcome back to Badass of the Week. I am here with Paul Jacobs, and Karl von Müller he's a honorable warrior. He is a mild-mannered commander, but he is a very, very bold person. And when 4 navies are searching for him, he doesn't back down, doesn't get scared. He doubles down and does his most daring attack yet.
Yeah, he learns from one of the prisoners from the merchant ships that he's captured that there are some warships at Penang Harbor on the Malayan coast. And so he decides that he's going to go in there and he's going to attack the port and the ships that are in there. So on October 28th of 1914, in the late night or early morning hours, he simply sails into the harbor unopposed, and
it's got that fake funnel.
And
fake
funnel. But nobody's really expecting anybody anyway. They're certainly not expecting him. And in the harbor is a smaller, older Russian cruiser, the Zemchug, which is anchored there, but it has larger guns than Emden does, but it's totally unprepared for an attack.
Right. Everybody's asleep. The captain is not even on the boat when the attack happens. He's in the port hanging out. They're not expecting to be attacked. There's one enemy warship within hundreds of miles. It just happens to be in this protected port attacking a ship twice its size.
Yeah, and now he sails in without flying a flag, but when he gets in the harbor, he raises the German flag. He fires a torpedo at very close range, which hits Zemchug, and he delivers a broadside, which does a lot of damage to Zemchug. And the Russians do manage to get off a few shots, though they're totally ineffective. And then he turns around, fires a second torpedo, which hits Zemchug's magazine, and Zemchug blows up and sinks. And then he races out of the harbor. And on the way out of the harbor, he comes across a small French destroyer, which is coming into the harbor. And Emden quickly sinks it. And then he stops and picks up the survivors.
Right. Right. He broadsides the Mosquet. He sinks it. The French crew has to abandon ship because they're going down. And yeah, he stops to rescue the French sailers so they're not so they don't drown. And then once he's got once he's rescued 36 French sailors out of the burning wreckage of the ship that he just blew up, then he sails off into the mist. Right.
He just disappears again. So, this really sets off the British and the French, that he's gotten away with this. But they still can't find him. He's now headed southeast towards Australia. Where he's headed is the Cocos Islands, which are off the coast of Australia. His purpose there is to meet the collier Burresque, which is one of the ships he had captured, and to recoal, but also on one of the islands there, Direction Island, is a radio station. And in addition, there are telegraph cables that run through the islands down to Australia. And those cables are actually the only cables that link Australia to the rest of the world. So his goal, he figures, if he can destroy the radio station and cut the cable, then it's going to be even more difficult for the British to stop him or to find him. He sails to Direction Island, and he lands a 50-man landing party under the command of his executive officer Helmuth von Müller. The Emden intercepts a transmission from a British cruiser on his radio. Back then, radio was still in its infancy, but they are able to pick up radio transmission from other ships at some distance. And although this is a coded transmission, he figures it's a British cruiser. But he also assumes it's pretty far away. What he doesn't know is that there's a major troop convoy which is sailing from Australia to the Suez Canal to the Red Sea, and there are 20,000 Australian and New Zealand troops aboard.
Oh, geez.
So, I mean, this is a major troop convoy, and it's got a strong naval escort. There's a Japanese battle cruiser with the convoy, and there's also several Australian and British cruisers. But von Müller doesn't know is that the Australian cruiser Sydney is only about 50 miles away from Direction Island, where he's arrived and has put his landing party ashore.
Right. So he sends 50 guys on board to try to knock the telegraph station off, but before they can capture it, it gets a message off to the Sydney, I believe, unidentified warship at entrance.
Yes, as von Mücke's boats arrive in the harbor at Direction Island, the inhabitants, who are British and Australians, recognize that the Emden is out there. At this point, I think the Emden had removed its dummy funnel. I'm not sure, but in any event, the head of the radio party sends out a message saying that the Emden has arrived there. Mm-hmm. And this is picked up by the Sydney and by the admiral of the convoy. So they're now forewarned about this. And von Müller arrives on the island. He disables the radio, blows up the radio tower, and cuts the cable. So he succeeds in all that. But what he doesn't know is that there's an Australian cruiser on its way.
Right. And the Sydney outguns the Emden, and it's faster, bigger, more powerful warship than the Emden.
Yeah, the Sydney is a light cruiser, but it's more modern, and it has, whereas the Emden only has 4.1 inch or 105 millimeter guns, Sydney has 6-inch guns, 152 millimeters. She's faster, she's more modern, and her captain can keep her, out of range of the Emden's guns. So this is going to be a one-sided battle when it happens. At the convoy, meanwhile, the admiral has to decide who he's going to send to intercept the Emden. He doesn't want to strip the convoy of other cruisers. He knows that the Emden is closest, and so the Sydney gets the job. As von Müller is waiting for his landing party to finish their work, he spies smoke on the horizon. And soon, at first he thinks it's maybe his collier, but soon realizes that it's not. It's as it happens, Australian cruiser. And so he immediately backs up out of the harbor and gets up steam, and because he knows he's got to fight or run if he can.
He's got 50 guys on the shore here. They accomplished their mission of cutting off Australia's telegraph, but they've got he can't abandon them. He's stuck. He's trapped. He can't even outrun the Sydney because it's faster. So at this point, he's got to close that distance. No, he can't.
And so he actually starts running north away from the island, though. Sydney, of course, catches up to him, and it's about an hour-long fight, actually, although Sydney quickly scores hits. I mean, her gunnery is really good. Mm-hmm. And Emden manages to score a hit or two on Sydney, but does minimal damage, kills and injures a couple of his of the crewmen on Sydney. But Sydney quickly demolishes the Emden. Emden loses her funnels. Her engine room is damaged. And finally, von Müller decides he's going to run the ship ashore because it's the only way he figures that he can save his crew.
Right. And I really like this. So during the battle, Emden they damage the rangefinder on the Sydney. But like you said, they're outgunned and like they've got to close the distance. They're getting hammered by bigger guns, better, like faster, more maneuverable. He fights well, but by the time his ship is battered, the steering's destroyed, half his crew's either killed or wounded. And yeah, he decides to run his ship onto a coral reef because then when his men bail out, they're not going to sink down into the bottom of the ocean where they can never be rescued. So he didn't want to sink it in deep water. So he crashes it. He runs it aground to save his people.
He runs it hard aground and then gets his surviving crew off. He's got about 100 dead and about 65 wounded. As compared to Sydney, they only had 4 dead and a few wounded. The Sydney left the scene, caught up to the Burresque, and the crew of the Burresque scuttled the ship, and then the Sydney went back to where Emden was grounded. And as it happened, Emden's flag was still flying.
Oh, interesting.
So the captain of the Sydney thought she was, had not surrendered, and he fired several rounds into her, which von Müller considered very dishonorable. He actually, after he was captured, complained, to the captain of the Sydney about it. So that was the end of the Emden's Odyssey, but just the beginning of the Odyssey for the landing party.
Yes, absolutely. So von Müller is captured. As a show of respect to Müller, the captain of the Sydney allows von Müller to keep his sword, which he doesn't have to surrender because they knew who he was. He was a celebrity, right? He's a hero. He's like a naval hero, right? He was in all of these newspapers. So when they capture him, they treat him, kind of the way he was treating his prisoners. So they let him keep his sword, but he does become a prisoner.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, in the Pacific at this point, or the Indian Ocean, on this side of the world, it's still a gentleman's war.
Yes, they're removed from all of the brutality of the flamethrowers and all of this other horrible thing that is happening in the Western Front.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I failed to mention was that after the attack on Madras, von Müller sailed the Emden to Diego Suarez in the Indian Ocean, which was a British, this island, which now is actually an American and British base. But anyway, there were British military on the island, and they didn't know that a war had broken out.
Oh, my gosh.
And so he showed up there, and the British and the Germans together, they partied. I mean, they had a football game, and he resupplied there, and the British didn't even know that they were at war.
That's amazing.
So, it was, like I said, it's still a gentleman's war on that side of the world.
Yes. But so von Müller's captured. The Emden has run aground. Its crew has been captured. But left behind on Direction Island is Captain Lieutenant Helmuth von Mucke and 49 other men. They've just cut the telegraph cables to cut off Australia from any outside communication and destroyed the radar or the wireless station at Direction Island. Von Mucke and his guys watch the Emden disappear over the horizon to go battle the Sydney. They hear naval artillery and they realize 2 things. Number 1, the Emden is not coming back. Number 2, that Allied warship, once it's done defeating the Emden, is going to come here and capture us.
Yes, right.
So what do?
Von Mucke spots this old 3-masted schooner in the harbor, the Ayesha, and it's the station ship for the island, but it's old and it's leaky, actually. I mean, he decides that he's going to take his men aboard it and sail it out and try and escape.
Now, Paul, a 97-foot wooden schooner for 50 guys, that feels crowded.
Yeah, I mean, the normal crew for the Aisha was like 5 people. So, yeah, it's not meant, for a whole bunch of men.
Mhm. This is not a troop transport. It's like a wooden sailing ship, like a small one.
Yeah, it's an old wooden schooner. And so he gets all his men and his equipment because he has equipment. He's got his landing party. They have rifles. He's brought 4 machine guns ashore with him. And so he loads all these on the Aisha. And the ship has no supplies at all on board. But the civilians on the island, they've been very cordial. The Germans have been cordial to them. They've been cordial to the Germans. So the civilians help him. They provide him with supplies. They give him what information they can give him. He doesn't have any maps, really, except some old map of the Indian Ocean, which isn't very, very specific.
Right, because they left all the navigational stuff on the Emden. They thought they were coming back. They thought they were going to be gone for a few hours.
Yeah, the schooner is really not equipped to travel, but he gets on board whatever he can, and he gives out misinformation to the civilians. He tells them, he mentions, or he lets them hear that his intention is to sail toward German West Africa. Whereas he really intends to sail to Arabia. Once out of sight, he turns the ship northeast. Instead of going west, he goes northeast towards the Dutch East Indies because he's hoping that when he gets to the Dutch East Indies, he can get help from the German consul there. He knows that if the Dutch catch him, they'll intern him and his crew, and he doesn't want that.
Right.
But he's also concerned, about trying to take the Aisha all the way across the Indian Ocean because he's not convinced that the ship is going to make it.
Like, already has to have guys like with buckets, like pulling water out of the ship, basically 24/7.
Yeah, the ship is leaking. And so they have to, keep bailing. I think it takes them about a week or more to get to Padang on the coast of Sumatra.
Yes, they start to run out of water. They start to run out of food. They run into a couple of storms.
Yeah.
They're manning the ship that they've just met that is not in good condition, and they're crossing open water in the Pacific with it.
Yeah, and they also have to avoid the British because, of course, the British are looking for them. I mean, the British know that they have this schooner and that they're traveling somewhere in the Indian Ocean. They just don't know where they are.
You see this 3-masted schooner with a bunch of Germans unloading water from buckets on the deck. That's our guy.
Yeah, and so they're managing as they can, and when they get to Sumatra, they basically kind of try and disguise themselves as just a merchant ship, a merchant schooner to keep to prevent themselves from being captured by the Dutch Navy. And in fact, at one point they are stopped by the Dutch, but manage to convince the Dutch that they're Dutch, that they're just a merchant vessel.
Mm-hmm. Which kind of makes sense if they can kind of adjust their uniforms enough and hide the machine guns, right? Like, this is not a German warship. It's not German flagged.
Yeah, well, they have no intention of fighting anybody. I mean, they're not obviously in a position to take on a foreign warship. They just want to get away. So when they do get to Padang, they manage to meet up with a German cargo ship because the Germans can, because the Dutch are neutral, the Germans can trade with them, right? German merchant ships aren't going to be interned in Dutch waters because they're not a warship. So they managed to meet up with a German cargo ship named the Choising, which had actually served as a supply vessel for the Emden when the Emden was cruising. And so von Mucke goes out to sea, meets the Choising at sea, transfers his men to Choising, and they start off headed towards Arabia. I mean, their time on the Ayesha is a real challenge because, as you said, at times they're close to running out of water. They're fortunate because they get rainwater. In one case, they end up in the tail of a typhoon.
Oh my gosh!
Which they have to weather, and they survive on fish that they catch because they're not in a position, obviously, to capture any ships and get supplies from them. So, it's a real difficult voyage on the Ayesha before they're able to get to Choising. The Choising, on the other hand, is a steamship. They're able to travel without any difficulties and make it to the Arabian Peninsula.
Right. And so they arrive at Arabia, and Arabia is part of the, we've talked about the Germans and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but the Ottoman Empire is in the war at this point on the German side.
Yes, correct. And in 1914, the Ottoman Empire comprised basically all of the Mideast, including what was then Palestine, Jordan, what's now Syria, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia, and the entire Arabian Peninsula. Pretty much the only thing in the Middle East that was not part of the Ottoman Empire is Persia, which is Iran now. So they arrive in what is now Yemen at the opening to the Red Sea. And the problem they face there is that the British and the French have complete control over the Red Sea itself. They don't control the Arabian Peninsula, but they don't need to. What they need is to be able to control the Red Sea because, of course, the Red Sea is the pathway to and from the Suez Canal. And so the British have warships in the Red Sea looking for anything that's German. They can't really enter into the Red Sea, and of course, even if they could, they certainly couldn't go up to where the Panama Canal is.
Sure. So what are your options if you're trying to get to the Ottoman Empire, which is far away from Yemen?
Well, Yemen is part of the Ottoman Empire too.
Oh, at the time, okay.
But and the cities, which are relatively few and all located along the coast, are basically under control of the Ottomans. Most of what is now Saudi Arabia is not really under their control at all. It's basically wilderness, desert, with tribes, Bedouin tribes that control the territory.
Right. This is Lawrence of Arabia. I mean, this is the same time period, right?
Exactly. What there are Bedouin tribes that control various areas of the countryside. And some of them are friendly to the Ottomans. Some of them are not. Some of them are friendly to each other, and some of them are not. When you mentioned Lawrence of Arabia, well, the Bedouins they are tough cookies.
Tough characters, yeah.
Yeah, these guys are basically a warrior society. And while at the time, the Europeans and Americans, the Western world considers them to be uncivilized, they have their own civilization, with their own rules and their own honor and their own requirements. So they pose a potential threat to von Mucke and his crew, or a potential help.
Mm-hmm. And he's not sure which.
So von Mucke, however, is able to land, get onshore, and go to one of the nearest cities, where he connects up with some Arabs who are pro-German. And with their help, he and his party are able to move their way up the coast because they want to get to Jeddah. Jeddah is northwest on the Arabian coast. And from there, they can meet up with the Ottoman Turk authorities who are definitely in control of Jeddah. And they can then get to a railroad which will take them north through Iraq and Syria and into Turkey and to Constantinople. And so this begins a journey that's going to take them a couple of months at least.
Right. I mean, they were in China, right? Let's recap, like, Helmut von Mucke. Like, he was in China. The war begins. He starts sailing around the Indian Ocean, lone wolf with von Müller. The two of them are capturing and sinking all kinds of ships. They're attacking ports. They're just wreaking havoc to four different navies and empires. He's on this lone wolf suicide. He's on this like lone wolf mission into Australia to cut the telegraph wires there. Gets on this boat, sails it across something like 700 miles of open water to find help. And then is able to get from there to a German ship that then takes him to Yemen. And now his plan, him and his 49 men, their plan is to march by camel through the Arabian desert, or by camel or on foot through the Arabian desert, right, in 110 degree heat. And it's just kind of like, it's kind of planes, trains, and automobiles, but they're also traveling through all different manner of even just climate. Like, they were in the jungle, then they were in the ocean, now they're in the desert. What an adventure.
Yeah. And in the meantime, the British and the French, they have spies in some of the different towns along the coast there. And so they get word, that von Mucke and his party are in Arabia. And so they're looking for him. They want to catch him. In the meantime, he's spreading false information, to mislead the British and the French to try and keep them off his trail. So he's working his way northwest along the coast. And in a couple of instances, he's able to get boats and travel along the Red Sea coast, northward, rather than by land. And in one instance, one of the boats runs on a reef, and half of his men fall out into the water. He's able to salvage, get them all, save them all, and salvage all his equipment. But this is it's a difficult journey.
Right. He's in enemy territory, surrounded at all times by spies and people who are trying to stop him.
Yeah.
And he's trying to get his guys back home.
At one point, he goes inland with some Bedouins and Arabs who take him inland, thinking that he can travel that way. And so he's hosted by Bedouins. I mean, just like in the movies, mm-hmm. They live in tents. They host him. I mean, if they're friendly with you, then you're their guests, and they treat you, like family. Mm-hmm. And so his men are treated to, feasts, the whole 9 yards. But he finds that they discover there's just no way they can cross Arabia anywhere except maybe when they get to Jeddah. So they keep heading north, evading the British a number of times. Like they have to abandon the boats at one point because there's a French warship that's guarding the passage through the Red Sea, and they know they are not going to be able to get past. And finally, they get within, I don't know, 50 miles or so of Jeddah. And at that point, they run into a problem and a battle. By this time, von Müller has managed, except for having lost one man to illness, he's managed to keep all of his men alive and healthy. Unlike Odysseus, by the way.
Right, who got all of his guys killed.
Yeah, Odysseus got everybody killed, but
now he's going to be attacked, and they're military personnel, but they're not soldiers. They're not infantry, right? These are sailors who were trained for naval combat, and now they're about to be attacked in the desert by Bedouins. And there's not a lot to they don't have a lot of training in how to deal with this. And they've come so far, all this waste, the whole commerce raiding expedition, the whole attack on Direction Island, the whole sailing out here and coming through the desert. They're so close to the end. If they can just get to this town, they're going to be free, and they're going to get to this railway, and they're going to get back home. And it's just like, man, now we were in for it. There's going to be a fight.
Yeah, they are camped out in the desert, not far from the Red Sea, but it's desert, you know. I mean, Arabia back then had nothing really. Persia was producing oil at that point. There was no oil being produced in Arabia at that point, and Arabia was just basically all desert. And so they're out in the desert, and they are approached by Bedouins. And these Bedouins are not friendly. They see that there's a lot of them. And their leader demands that von Müller give up all their weapons, all their food, all their supplies, and demands a large payment in gold. So basically, they're going to leave von Müller and his men with nothing. And for that matter, he can't even be sure that they won't, kill him and his men anyway.
The second he puts his guns down, yeah.
So von Müller refuses. And so the Bedouins leave. They don't go far. And they turn around and they attack. Now, von Müller's men, most of them have rifles, and they have four machine guns.
They've been carrying this whole time from the Emden.
Yeah, although the standard machine gun that you see in the First World War is the water-cooled type machine gun, Maxim, and they have this water-cooled cooling tube. Radiator or whatever you want to call it. But, right. It looks like a pipe, right? Mm-hmm. And inside of it is the barrel, and it's served by two men, and those things were really heavy. But there was also another kind of machine gun, which wasn't quite as common in use, and that was an air-cooled machine gun. There had been air-cooled machine guns invented. And, if you've seen the typical 50 caliber air-cooled machine gun from World War II, those are much lighter weight, and they have a thin barrel with air holes in it. Well, right. The Germans had four of these with their landing party. Kind
of looks like an MG-42 or an MG-34.
Yeah, and they still required basically a two-man crew. And mounted on either a tripod or a bipod. With four machine guns, what he did was they dug a berm around, a rectangular berm within which they had their equipment. They had camels and, whatever else. So they held off the attack. And
for 3 days, not just like one attack. It was 3 days.
Yeah, for 3 days they were under attack. And they, from what they could tell, there were several hundred Bedouins out there.
And they got 49 guys total. with 4 machine guns and limited ammunition, right? Like it was only what they could carry, only what they'd been carrying with them from the schooner, right? And man, that's stressful to have to keep facing charge after charge. You have basically no water.
Fortunately, they had plenty of ammunition because they hadn't used any of these guns at all.
I guess that's true.
You know,
huh?
They had all the ammunition, which they had managed to bring with them, but they had never fired a shot before this from any of their weapons. So they had plenty of ammunition at least, but they were running out of food and water. Von Müller had several Arabs with him, as guides, and he was able to get a couple of them out of his camp, and they got to Jeddah, where they were able to get in touch with the Arabs there, and a Bedouin sheikh and troops then rode out to where the battle was. And when including actually Turkish troops, and when the Bedouins who were attacking, they discovered that a relief force was coming. So the Bedouin leader, put up a white flag to, signal truce. He met with von Müller, and basically he offered to let him keep everything except some money. Pay us some money, we'll go away. You can keep everything else. And von Müller, he figured, yeah, they know that the relief force is coming, so this is their last gasp. Mm-hmm. So he told them, take a hike. We're not paying you anything. Right. So the Bedouins disappeared into the desert. In the course of the battle, he lost 2 men who were killed. So he and the rest of them made it to Jeddah. And from there, they were escorted by friendly Bedouins north up through Iraq, into Iraq, where they caught a train, because the Turks had built a railroad. And actually, this is the railroad that Lawrence of Arabia later attacked.
Right.
Yeah, this is that railroad. But at this point in time, it was intact. And so they rode the railroad all the way up to Constantinople, where they were greeted as heroes. There was a parade and banquets, and then they were able to cross the Dardanelles to Bulgaria and get up through Austria and to Berlin, where, of course, once again, they were treated as heroes.
Right, because the rest of the crew's captured, including von Müller. They're prisoners of the British. But Helmut von Müller and these 49 other guys, 3 of them die on the way home. But they return. It's been 6 months, something like 10,000 miles after being stranded. They were stranded on a tiny island in the Indian Ocean, and they make their way, planes, trains, and automobiles, to Berlin, where they are greeted as heroes. Every single member of the landing party is given the Iron Cross, or is awarded the Iron Cross.
Yeah.
And and it's just this kind of national, they're national heroes for surviving this odyssey.
Well, and a couple of other things in an epilogue. The crew that was captured, they went into prison camps. Von Müller ended up in a camp in Malta, but because of his illness, he was then taken to Britain and ultimately was transferred to the Netherlands. He died, I think, in 1923. His health just was not good.
Right. He does attempt to escape once when he's in England. The weather in England is bad for his malaria. It makes it a little worse. He and 21 other officers do a kind of mini great escape where they dig their way out of a British prison camp. They tunnel out of a prison camp, but they're recaptured shortly after. But he gets really sick when he's in England, and then he's transferred out, like you said, to Switzerland and then the Netherlands. He's promoted. He's awarded the Blue Max, which is the Medal of Honor for Germany at the time. He does he repeatedly denies requests to write his memoirs because he doesn't want to profit off of his wartime fame. But yes, he dies in 1923 at the age of 49 because of his bad health. Now, von Mucke's story is a little different.
Yeah, von Mucke survived the First World War. He wrote 2 books, one about the Emden and one called the Ayesha, but it's really about his escape from captivity and the return to Germany.
But those books become like international bestsellers. Like in 1922, he does a tour of the U.S. because it's like a best-selling book. It's like the stories these guys were heroes in their own time. And the story, yes, he becomes a German national hero, but when the story gets out, like, this is good. This is all interesting adventure. It's a pulp adventure story, right? And so when these books come out, he gets to, he's drawing huge crowds. He's an international celebrity when he comes to the U.S. to do his book tour.
Yeah, now he did join the National Socialist Party, which, ultimately was the Nazi Party.
He's upset about the Treaty of Versailles. He joins the Nazi Party and is elected to a regional parliament in Saxony in 1926. But by 1929, he's like, I don't actually like the way this is going. And he turns against the Nazi Party. He breaks with the Nazi Party and declares pacifism. And starts writing books and having lectures across Germany, warning against rearmament, warning against Hitler, warning against the Nazi Party.
Yes, and as a result, he was arrested and imprisoned by the Nazis.
Yes, the Gestapo arrests him. His books are banned.
Yeah,
he's traveling around to different prisons and prison camps for most of the 30s.
But he did get a sympathetic warden at one of the prisons, released him on condition that he remain out of public life, which he did. Mm-hmm. So he basically hid out through the war, and he didn't serve in the Second World War. After the war, he returned to promoting peaceful causes, and he died in 1957.
Yes. Karl Kaufmann he was a Nazi Party member. He was the governor of Hamburg. But when he heard that Helmut von Mucke was imprisoned in one of his prisons, Karl Kaufmann had read all of his books and was just like, this guy's a national hero. What are you doing imprisoning him? We can't do this. And like you said, he let him out because he was like, I'm not going to hold you in prison, but just don't cause any more trouble. Just stop writing books about how much you hate Hitler. Just be quiet and be cool. And you can not be in prison anymore. And he did that until after the war. Now, the Emden itself sits on the reef for decades before finally having the steel salvaged. The wreckage still exists underwater in Pulu-Keeling National Park. And if you have a permit, you can scuba dive there and see pieces of the Emden because he ran it ashore in shallow ground. Some parts were salvaged. Most famously, the ship's bell was salvaged and was put in a museum in Australia. It became famous because it was stolen twice out of that museum. But now it's back and you can go see it. But that is Karl von Müller and Helmut von Mucke and the story of the Emden, which is one of the most amazing naval adventures I've ever encountered. But a story that I feel like doesn't get told that much by any of the sources that I've come across. So Paul, it was just awesome to have you come on and tell this story. Just an adventure. It's got everything. It's got piracy. It's got gunfights. It's got, escapes. It's got adventures. It's a survival story. It's, the story has everything. And it was just awesome to have you come on and help us tell it today.
I'm glad that we were able to do this. I would like to suggest, I can tell you that Helmut von Mucke's books are still available. I mean, they can be found. I've got,
and they're good. I read them in preparation for this. And there's so much more to the story even than what we went into today. Like, he has so many other little side adventures. We don't really have time to tell the whole story right now, but but it's definitely worth a read.
Yes, the books are very entertaining, and I plowed right through them, so I recommend it. Well, thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. And thanks to all of you out there for listening to this episode. We do this every week. So if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. We also have a Patreon, and we are also doing video episodes on YouTube. You know where to find us. So hopefully we will see you again next week with another story from history. Until then, thank you so much and stay badass. Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content and $7 Productions. Executive producers are Dwayne Johnson, Danny Garcia, Andrew Jacobs, Hiram Garcia, Brian Gewirtz, Frankie Chaparino, and of course, me, Ben Thompson. Writing is by me and my semi-regular but always awesome co-host, Dr. Patricia Larish. Story editing by Ian Jacobs. Our mixing, music, and sound design is done by the incomparable Jude Brewer. Production support by Jean McHale-Waite. Badass of the Week is based on my website, badassoftheweek.com, where you can read all sorts of stories about other badasses. If you want to reach out with questions or ideas, you can email us at badasspodcast@badassoftheweek.com. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, follow, listen, tell your friends, and tell your enemies. And please leave us a review. If you want to support Badass of the Week, please check out our Patreon page. We'll be back next week with another one.
Hi, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. Are you looking for a beach read this summer? May I suggest your big wireless bill? It's got suspense, mystery, a slightly flat emotional arc, and a shocking twist where you realize you've been overpaying the entire time. Fortunately, though, Mint's story is better. Every plan, $15 a month, even unlimited. That's it. Happy ending, zero tears.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
Insurance operations today are fragmented, and policyholders expect more. That's why leading insurers run on Adyen. From premium collection to claims payout, Adyen supports the entire insurance value chain, giving insurers full control over how money moves. A single platform to reduce fragmentation, complexity, and risk. Drive revenue, control claims cost, and power your next move with Adyen. Learn more at adyen.com.